everybody's a little bit disgruntled, not happy about the way things are going, and hopefully we can change that with a grassroots effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been talking just about this, establishment. They always are going to have a candidate. And, we asked you the last time you were on if you were that candidate, and you denied it. We had political activist, also member of the Pope County Republican Committee, Lane Scott. He was on the program last hour singing your praises, saying that, you're a straight talker and you independent thinker, and you're not going to allow. He actually said that you can smell the skunk without actually having to see the skunk, which means that, you're not going to be tricked, fooled, or bullied at the Marble Palace. And so that's very refreshing. I thought it was good to hear from him.
Yeah, Lane's a good dude. I like him.
Yeah.
He's about as solid as they come right there.
Yeah, he really is, and he's been a friend of mine for a couple years now, and friend of the program. Hey, so let's just get right to it. Okay. Steve Bronner, he wrote a piece over at Talk Business and Politics over at talkbusiness.net that highlighted you and your two other opponents, Breann Davis and Luke Heffley. They're the other Republicans that are vying in this primary. Their positions on what has become a defining policy for the state of Arkansas, because it affects everything we want to do, from tax cuts, to budgeting, everything, which is, Arkansas Works, Obamacare, which is, Asa Hutchinson thinks needs to continue. The two other candidates, your opponents, they said that they support the status quo, indicated that things are fine the way they are, according to the article. You said, no, you're the only one that is taking a very anti-establishment view on this issue. Talk about that.
The more I read about this thing, the more I learn about it, the more it looks like a big government scam to me. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There's some provisions in here that are ridiculous. I don't think it should be the function of government to even be in health care. I think it's unconstitutional. I think that the whole Obamacare itself, the way it was passed, was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court ruling on this so that it could be pushed as that was wrong. Anytime you have to rename a program because the name of it is toxic to most people, I mean, to me, that's a deceptive practice. And as such, I would be in favor of totally and completely eliminating the whole program. This thing here was funded by the feds for 3 years. They came out and they said, and it looks to me like, now, this is just my opinion, I could be wrong, it looks to me like the roll was padded with as many people as they could get so they could draw more money from the federal government. And now, 3 years later, that we don't have it, they're shucking off tens of thousands of candidates because now all of a sudden we've got to pay for it. I see this thing as an endless money pit. It's unsustainable. I think if we don't get rid of this pretty quick, it's never going to go away. It's going to get progressively worse. We're going to have to put more and more into it. And, of course, what's going to happen with that? They're going to have to start pulling taxes out of other programs. And then the big call is, oh, my God, we need to have more taxes to pay for this. And I'm just not about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they already attempted that with a lot of tax increases. Some they passed, some they proposed from Republicans last year. We're talking with Bob Bailey, Senate candidate Republican for District 16. You mentioned the phrase politically toxic. Now, Bob, I don't know if you heard in 2015 the governor's speech at UAMS on the private option.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Happy Monday to everybody out there, and thank you for starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and we want you guys to be a part of it. One of the ways you can help us out and be a part of it is, sound off about the show. Tell us what you think. Number is 870-275-9799, or we are broadcasting visually as well over at facebook.com/Conduit News. So we really appreciate everybody out there listening. So, wow, what a weekend it was on the national scene. I got to tell you, it really was so encouraging to watch Senator Tom Cotton. I feel. Let me just say this: I feel adequately represented on the issue of immigration in Washington D.C. by Senator Tom Cotton. I mean, I really do. I think from the time that he and Senator Perdue last year came out with their RAISE Act, and it was a big press conference. You remember this? It was a press conference. You had the president, you had David Perdue, and you had Senator Cotton, and they were there, and they were going over this concept that we're now talking about a lot more now, but it's this idea of, hey, we want a merit-based immigration system, so we want you to have skills. We want you to actually be able to stand on your own 2 feet if, you want to come to America. We want to put you through a little bit higher test than just, hey, I am alive. We want to know, well, what are you going to do for our country when you're here? Are you going to get a job? Are you going to be a taxpayer? Or are you going to end up on a government program somewhere where, more working Americans have to take care of more immigrants? And so it's very common sense. It's extremely offensive to people on the left, but I think to the majority of Arkansans, it's actually very refreshing. And so when you see Senator Cotton, whether he's on the Sunday shows or whether he's doing these interviews, it's so nice to have. Well, honestly, I mean, think about this for a second. Can we think about the fact that the biggest Democrat in the nation, power wise, is the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer. Okay, and you have the junior senator from Arkansas basically going toe to toe with him. In some circles, he's getting credit for derailing the Lindsey Graham and the Dick Durbin concept of that was essentially going to not be real, the kind of immigration reform that's actually going to fix our problems that we have. Of course, Senator Cotton denied that on Meet the Press because he said Donald Trump, Donald Trump doesn't need me to stiffen his spine, So let's actually, we have some of the audio here. Let's start with the government shutdown, shall we? Let's start with, first of all, let's start with Chuck Schumer. Can we do that real quick? I just want to give you a rundown of this because this is fascinating to me. So the government is shut down, and it's shut down over illegal immigration. I can't, what's crazy to me is that we are now depriving citizens of benefits, our military, over people who are in violation of the law. Is that not what a gamble that is? Well, I'm just saying from the Democrat standpoint, that looks terrible. I mean, that is a terrible image that the most of America, and then the mainstream media won't report on it, but the most of America, flyover country, is going to find that very, very odd, to say the least. That is an understatement, okay? Back in 2013, though, when there were talks of government shutdowns because of, budgetary needs and things like that, and Republicans were trying to hold the line, Senator Chuck Schumer said this.
There wasn't really a give and take. It was
not.
We're not giving you anything. You have no leverage, and you're wrong. Could this not have ended sooner if Democrats had not taken such a hard line?
Well, it was not a hard line on the substantive issues. It was a hard line saying, unless I get my way, I'm going to shut the government down. I'm going to risk default for the nation. Now, anyone can do that. I believe in immigration reform. What if I persuaded my caucus to say I'm going to shut the government down? I'm going to not pay our bills unless I get my way. It's a politics of idiocy, of confrontation, of paralysis.
All right.
And so finally what happened...
All right, so that's Chuck Schumer from 2013 calling Chuck Schumer from 2018 an idiot. He's calling himself an idiot in the past, or in the future. I don't know, depending on how you look at it. He's calling himself an idiot. Now, what's interesting about this is I don't think... Joe said, you said Back to the Future? So I don't... What if that was the mission? I've got to stop myself from calling myself an idiot in the past. All right. The interesting thing is I don't think government shutdowns are politics of idiocy. Okay, I really don't. I think, as a matter of fact, it's a good way to draw attention to a national issue. It also is a big political risk. You better make sure, if you go to the mat on a government shutdown, that the majority of the American people, it either needs to be something that is deathly serious, of like the highest issue, highest risk. We've got to shut the government down because you don't understand there's some, huge issue that, has to be brought to the attention of the American people. Or, politically speaking, you want to make sure that you're doing, that it's an issue that everybody is on board with. Because in a democratically elected republic, that you really do have the support of the people. And I don't think the Democrats have the support of the people on this, because you're shutting down the government when Republicans are willing to give you the amnesty. That's what's crazy to me, to be quite honest, to people on the base, it's actually frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating to see Republicans say, okay, all right, we'll give you the amnesty. We'll give you the amnesty for the DACA people, but we actually want border security. We want a wall, and we're not going to let these new, what they say, is 800,000 people. We're not going to let these people bring 6 to 7 million members of their family once they get legal protections. We're going to stop that. And all the Democrats can see is future votes and future elections, and they're like, wow, we want their family members to come because eventually maybe they're going to get a vote, or maybe their kids are going to get a vote or whatever. So that's what's really going on here. So that was Chuck Schumer calling himself an idiot. On Friday, after we got off the air on Friday, Tom Cotton was on Fox News. Dana Perino, he said this.
What happened in the meeting between Senator Schumer and the president?
Well, I hope the president talks some sense into Senator Schumer and the Democrats so we don't have the Schumer shutdown tonight. It's a good thing anytime whenever the key leaders of our Congress and the president are talking. I suspect the president told Senator Schumer he needs to talk a little bit more with Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan, though. But Senator Schumer and the Democrats have been very stubborn on this immigration proposal. Remember, we're proposing to keep the government funded for 30 days to continue immigration negotiations in which Republicans have largely agreed that we want to provide legal protections for young people who were brought here through no fault of their own. What we want to make sure that we stop, though, is future illegal immigration and future flows of unskilled or low-skilled immigration that undercut wages and take jobs from Americans. That's what this is about. The Democrats don't even want to allow that because we're willing to provide legal protections to the so-called DACA population. But look, we shouldn't shut down the government and deprive American citizens of services, and especially deprive kids of health insurance for the next 6 years, all because the Democrats are not going to get their way in giving an amnesty to illegal immigrants and encouraging more illegal immigration in the future.
Yeah, so that's the health insurance he's referring to there is the CHIP program that apparently behind the scenes Democrats really do want to vote for. But, they don't want to break this stalemate. I don't know. I think the entire country is breathing a sigh of relief because the government is shut down, quite honestly. Of course, most of it still operates as is. That's all. That's a whole nother. You could get into the minutia of that if everybody in the media melting down because the government shut down, and really things are still kind of going on as they always do. So. Let me just think about this for a second. When I was going over this, when I tweeted on Saturday how well represented I felt by Senator Tom Cotton's stance on immigration, I thought to myself, remember when we had Senator Mark Pryor in there? I mean, you could go further back to Blanche Lincoln, but remember Senator Pryor? Can you imagine if Senator Pryor were still in office? You see, this is, in many ways, I feel like, regardless of what happens in the outcome, I think this is, in a lot of ways, a huge victory for the people of Arkansas. And the reason I feel that way is because here we have somebody like Senator Tom Cotton, who campaigns as a Republican, under the Republican platform, as a conservative, as a guy who is a very fiscally conservative, a budget hawk. And here's this issue on immigration. He knows how the people of Arkansas feel about it. He feels strongly about it, and he's representing us accordingly. And I just feel like that's very refreshing. And in light of the fact that I don't see that very often from the folks down in Little Rock at the Marble Palace, how they're running a government that actually, I believe, is not consistent with the will of the people of Arkansas based on what their campaign rhetoric is versus what they actually implement. Now, let's be very clear. This is a strong stand. Senator Cotton is being a leader on the national front. He's going toe-to-toe, representing us with the Senate minority leader from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer. And I just, for one, want to say, and take a time to say, thank you, Senator Cotton, for what you're doing, because it's extremely refreshing in a day and age where politicians seem to just not want to take any risks. And they don't want to articulate the conservative message with an argument. And Senator Cotton is doing that. And I've said for a very long time that if you have a conservative that actually believes in it, we win most every time. When you are able to articulate your message, it is a winning message, okay? Conservatism, limited government, the very basic concept of immigration that is a country, we're able to pass laws and we get to decide who comes here, is a winning argument if you just have somebody who's willing to go out there and take the heat. Now, speaking of taking the heat, yesterday on Meet the Press, you had Chuck Todd, who was interviewing Senator Cotton. And, of course, Chuck Todd was so in the bag for the Democrats, you could tell. He wants to make the Republicans out to be the ones who are not willing to negotiate. And it's like, okay, hang on, Chuck. They're giving you the amnesty. We want the wall, and we want to end chain migration, and we want to actually have real immigration reform. Real quick, before we run out of time this segment, Joe, this is Tom Cotton on Meet the Press.
A lot of people, everything you're talking about on a smaller.
Yeah, right there.
A lot of people say you got to him and you stiffened his spine. So can you explain the president's position? Because it doesn't seem to be clear, as Mitch McConnell himself has said.
Chuck, I don't think anyone got to Donald Trump. Donald Trump studied the proposal that Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham put in front of him and realized it didn't address any of our key priorities. Not only did it give legal protections to the population that's in the DACA program, but it gave a mass amnesty to their parents as well, the people that created the problem to begin with. Didn't give money for new border barrier construction.
They weren't going to get citizenship.
But it gives them legal status. That's an amnesty by adjusting their status from illegal to legal, no matter what you call it. Didn't give money to build any new border barriers, only repair past border barriers. It didn't do anything to stop chain migration. Here's what the president has been clear on. Here's what I and so many Senate Republicans have been clear on. We're willing to protect this population that is in the DACA program. If we do that, though, it's going to have negative consequences. First, it's going to lead to more illegal immigration with children. That's why the security enforcement measures are so important. And second, it means that you're going to create an entire new population through chain migration that can bring in more people into this country that's not based on their skills and education and so forth. That's why we have to address chain migration as well. That is a narrow and focused package that should have the support of both parties.
All right, stop. All right, we're going to take a break. Again, Senator Cotton doing, I feel like, a really good job. I feel very well represented. How about you? On this issue of immigration, I feel very well represented in Washington, D.C., which I don't think is something we get to say very often. I guess, let me say, I don't get to say that very often because I focus on state politics so much. So let me clarify. Okay, folks, we got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Happy Monday. Back in a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is Mothered Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, everybody wake up out there. I will say this is week number 3 for me, switching from doing an afternoon broadcast to a morning broadcast, a bright and early morning broadcast. And I feel like I don't know what happened. Joe, do you feel better? You feel different? It's like week 3. I don't know if I'm just well-adjusted now or I figured out how to go to sleep earlier or what, but I feel better. Yeah. It's a lot easier. Hey, check out the Conduit for Action has these posts now. Senator Brian King and State Representative Josh Miller, they have a podcast now. You should listen to it. It's fantastic. It's a straight talk. I mean, it's the truth. These guys are telling you really, I think what they said was, we want to give you the real scoop, and get through the bubble, the Little Rock bubble, the Marble Palace, that sort of thing, and, tell you why what you hear from here doesn't make any sense to anyone living back home who's in the real world, but yet it makes sense to the folks, at the Marble Palace. And on that note, Fox News last night did this, I'm told, this, history of Arkansas and the Clintons' rise to power and everything like that. And, folks, some people, where they were texting me and they were basically like, yeah, I mean, essentially, Little Rock, if you really look at it, is described as like this little mini Chicago. And that is exactly what I've been saying for a long time now. And when the people of Arkansas have been voting for Republicans, and we went from a blue state to a quote red state, we're actually a purple state now because we have Democrats who are masquerading as Republicans, and it's very frustrating. But the people are voting for reform. They're voting for reform. They're voting to change the machine that gave the start to the political career that almost put 2, not 1, Clinton in the White House, but almost 2 Clintons in the White House. That's why when Arkansas went and voted for Donald Trump, it was really a badge of honor to, even though everybody knew our 6 votes were going to Trump anyway, but you understand, like, it was, in many ways, we were responsible for this because this all started in our own backyard. Can you imagine if she'd have won and the Supreme Court was changed for a generation and everything that would happen with religious freedom and liberty and things like that? Can you imagine the responsibility, the liability I would feel, and many of us would feel that, hey, this all started because of our government. So we need massive reforms at the Marble Palace. We need actual policies in the Republican platform to be implemented, not excuses for why we can't, because the status quo that the Democrats created for 138 years just can't be changed because all the lobbyists and everything, they're just used to it. But anyway, check out the Blue Collar Politics podcast with Senator Brian King and State Representative Josh Miller. Check that out. Real quick, last clip. This was Tom Cotton on Meet the Press, and I'm telling you, it's very refreshing to see what Senator Cotton is doing on the national stage with this immigration issue. Go ahead, Joe.
Everything you're talking about on a smaller population, like let's deal with the DACA and DACA-related population on all of those issues. That's part 1, and then there's a part 2 that you deal with the larger immigration law changes. That seems very reasonable. Why do you find that unreasonable?
So first, let me just say that Congress hasn't gotten part 1 right for decades, so it's important that we focus on part 1. But second, the proposal that Senator Durbin and Senator Graham put forward doesn't do any of those things. As I said, it doesn't just give legal protections for the 700,000 persons in the DACA program, but to millions of other people, to include the parents who brought those kids here in the first place.
That's really, really good. Now, let me take it a step further for everybody out there who's kind of nodding their heads and agreeing with me. Now I'm gonna walk over the line, but I can't help it. How refreshing is it to be accurately represented by Tom Cotton, to see him go on the liberal network of NBC and slug it out with Chuck Todd, who is a big liberal progressive guy in the media who masquerades with a cloak of objectivity it's a false narrative. How refreshing is that versus when Governor Hutchinson goes on MSNBC, he's used as a liberal puppet to criticize other Republicans, for example, when he was criticizing Donald Trump's ideas to repeal Obamacare. Back in a minute. But you guys can go back and look at it. It's on YouTube. But he actually used that phrase. He said that it had become politically toxic, the phrase private option. And you just said something I thought was so candid and so refreshing. You're saying anytime you have to rename a program because it's politically toxic, and Asa said it was politically toxic, that is a form of deception. I completely agree with you, sir.
You know, there are some good people that I have talked to in the last few days that were for this program. And the people that I know that were for the program, when you show them the facts, when you show them what's actually happened, they actually get enraged. They feel violated. I think there's a lot of good people out there that think, okay, you know, this isn't so bad. Arkansas works. It's a good thing for people that can't get any kind of health care. But the more you delve into it, and it's not hard to see, the more it becomes apparent that this thing is completely and totally ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And then you have to come to the question, why? Why is this something being done by the government? You know, one of the tenets of socialism is to completely control all the health care. And you have to wonder where all this is coming from.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I also would add, you know, there appears to be political calculations involved here. You mentioned that, and you're right. I mean, I really appreciate your grasp of this. You are right about how they padded the rolls. When the feds were paying everything, they're able to tax the insurance companies. So every policy that the federal government pays for, the state of Arkansas is actually making money and double tax. It's basically kind of like they're double dipping. They're taking the feds' dollars, but then they're getting they're sweetening the pot on that premium tax. So they have incentive to pad the rolls, and now that we have to pay, so there are two factors here. Now that we're having to pay, okay, we'll start to trim the rolls, number one. But number two, I'll announce that we're trimming the rolls right before a primary. I'll spin the headlines to make it seem like, oh, all of a sudden I'm Mr. Big Bad Conservative that believes in smaller welfare programs, and it's just you really, and I know I'm a skeptic, but the timing of this, the manipulation of this, is for political gain. It's so Governor Asa Hutchinson can retain power because he does have this primary opponent in Jan Morgan.
Yeah, funny how it happens like that, isn't it?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's power is very very tempting thing. People.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. All right, so funding, listen to this. This is interesting. I know this is a long ways away, but it is an election year. So we will be going to the polls, all of us, in November. And now before that, we do have a primary, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens in the primary between Jan Morgan and the incumbent Governor Asa Hutchinson. Jan is, making her rounds. We noted that last week, the governor seems to be following Jan, so she appears at this group of Republicans, and then he comes back. He comes behind her to talk, trying to clean up the damage, that sort of thing. He's very much on the defensive because what she's doing is pointing out his liberal record of growing government and things like that, and he certainly doesn't like that. You would be amazed at the there's no doubt that a Jan Morgan candidacy has provoked policies or let's just say not policies, but intimidation tendencies, okay, from the governor's office, specifically an email from Doug Smith that was leaked to me trying to get Jan Morgan uninvited from a Mississippi County Republican dinner. I guess that was back in November. And there's been all these other just these veiled intimidation. Sometimes it's outright intimidation. It is essentially the governor demanding fealty, loyalty from anyone who calls themselves a Republican. If you call yourself a Republican and you're in any sort of state party, in the state party or in the county committees at all, it is, hey, you need to support me. You better support me. Instead, the truth of the matter is, folks, the primary elections are our new general elections here in Arkansas. Because if you want to get elected to office, you basically have to be a Republican now. And so I've been doing talk radio since 2009, and so I've been talking about the pitfalls of growing government and how that is the home of the Democrat Party. That's what they believe, and the benefits of limited government is supposedly what Republicans or libertarians believe. And I've been talking about this for a long time. And here's the battle. The battle was pretty easy the first time. You had a socialist Marxist in the White House, Barack Obama, who essentially every policy he advocated was, let's let the government forcibly take everybody's money, and then let's divide it up equally, and we'll all be the better for it. And people are like, no, that's socialism or microwave communism. I don't think so. I don't think that's going to work. And that was his goal, to demonize job creators. You didn't build that. I mean, it was frightening. It was frightening time for this country, and that's the way a lot of people on the left now feel about Donald Trump, which is it's weird how that pendulum can swing so quickly. And be mindful, it can swing back, folks. And we got to make sure it doesn't. But that was easy compared to what I'm doing now. It was easy. It was easy to tell you about, for example, we were talking about Tom Cotton earlier and Mark Pryor. It was easy for me to tell you Mark Pryor's liberal voting record. It was easy for me to tell you how he's a Democrat, right? But now we have a harder task ahead because we don't have the change that we have been voting for at the state level, and we have Republicans that are essentially still implementing Democrat policies. And there are really a ton of facts that back that statement up. If you don't believe me and let's say you're an Asa loyalist, for every Asa loyalist out there, I have a question for you. How come in 2016 he convinced the Democrats in the Senate to vote for a bill that would defund Arkansas Works? Obamacare, a program they agree with. That is on the principle, like that is the Democrats. They believe it's the government's responsibility to take care of everybody's health care. And so they'll do it a section at a time, a population at a time, a percentage at a time, or whatever. And yet they trusted Asa Hutchinson so much. And because he told them, don't worry, it's the only way we can get around the constitutional requirement, the 3/4 requirement that you have to have in each chamber during a fiscal session. Don't worry, Democrats, vote for it, vote for a bill, and trust me, I'm the governor, I'll line item veto it. And then it still gets funded. And the Democrats went along with that because they agree with the policy. So for any Asa loyalists out there, the policies of the Democrat Party are still being implemented with massive Republican majorities. See, that's how this works. They will find a way to protect the status quo. And so you're not actually getting and that line item veto scheme, as it's called, some people thought was unconstitutional, but that's, whatever. I mean, that's long gone. That's in history now. The fact is, it was an amazing moment in 2016 when the Democrats trusted a Republican governor to line item veto something. He got the Democrats to vote for a bill to end Obamacare in Arkansas trusting that once it got to his desk, he would line item veto it, and they voted with him. They did it in order to get around the few Republicans who were actually trying to stop funding it, and were doing the best they could. So it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing stuff. Like I said, there's facts out there to back up what I say, what we say here. All that being said, once we get past the primary, whatever the results are, we have a general election, and on that general election, we have at least one ballot initiative that we as Arkansans are going to be asked to vote for or vote against. Now, one of them has to do with tort reform. One of them has to do with tort reform, and it was passed by the legislature. So the legislature said, okay, we're going to, write a tort reform amendment. It's an amendment to the Constitution, and it's going to give the legislature certain authority over the judicial branch because we need to reform, we need tort reform. We need to, frivolous lawsuits and things like that. And so let's stop for a second before we get into it. It's important, I think, to look at some relatively recent controversies concerning this idea of tort reform. You guys remember in the news a judge by the name of Mike Maggio. Okay. So he pled guilty to accepting a bribe of like 10 grand in order to reduce a judgment against a nursing home owner. So that's interesting. This tort reform amendment that we're going to be voting on this November has been described to me as tort reform for only a specific industry. And wouldn't you know, the people that will talk to me, they'll say, yeah, and that industry happens to be nursing homes. Now, on the other side of things, you've got trial lawyers who, they don't want any sort of tort reform at all, right? And they cite, their argument, they cite right to trial by jury, in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights and that sort of thing. And so here's the thing. I support tort reform in the sense that, yeah, maybe we need things like loser pay when you bring like just a frivolous lawsuit and things like that. Maybe we need stuff like that. I can get behind that. But let me tell you what you're voting on this November. That's not what this is. And as I've watched what the Marble Palace has become, as I've watched what it is, there is no way. For example, there is absolutely no way I would ever support giving the Arkansas General Assembly the authority to consider rules of evidence in a court case. This bill, if it passes, these politicians down there will be able to dictate to the courts rules of evidence. Now, that is something that, in my opinion, and this would be law. There's going to be lawsuits galore, but that is something that, in my opinion, folks, needs to rest with the separate and equal branches, the separate and equal branch of the judiciary. I think it's clear. And they're going to tell you, well, other states are doing what we're doing, not according to what I've read. I mean, I've read papers from law school, UALR law school down there, and they actually, if you read, it's a very lengthy document, but they'll eventually say what we're doing here is actually unlike. It'll be the most powerful tort reform law in the country in terms of that. So, no, there's not a chance. And here's the thing. I mean, let me just set this up for you, because it's going to happen. If this passes, if the tort reform passes that's on this particular, this is what's going to happen. There will be some special interest down the road who is in the middle of a court case. The Arkansas General Assembly will go into session, and I promise you that special interest will find a way to stick somewhere in some bill the rules of evidence and bail the special interest guy out who's tied up in court. I promise you that's going to happen. 100% guaranteed. Mark it down. It will happen if this bill passes because I know how things work down there. Now that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I can't believe this, but this is just the principle of the matter, and I consider myself to be a conservative and a constitutional conservative, a limited government conservative, a free market conservative, and based on the free market, if somebody told me that I had to cap what I was charging for ads on this program and said, you know what, you're just making too much money, so the government is going to come in and they're going to say, you can't charge this much for a 30-second spot. You've got to change. You got to make this. You can't. You're making too much money off of it. I think most people would say that that's preposterous. I think most people would say, is President Obama still in the White House? Is that what we're doing now? This tort reform amendment that we'll be voting on this November caps what attorneys can make in class action lawsuits. And I just have a problem with that. I think fundamentally that's wrong. And people say, well, Paul, there's the ethics of it. These attorneys, they get out there. Let's talk about the law, okay? Let's talk about a word called freedom or a word called liberty. I'm sorry. Yes, there are people that take advantage of other people in all professions and everything, and it's perfectly legal to do because some people don't know how to read between the lines. They don't, but they're making these decisions. They're seeking attorneys out. They're seeking, and so if there are good attorneys, there are bad attorneys, there are good doctors, there are bad doctors, there are good radio hosts, there are, I'm sure, bad radio hosts. Although I don't know if they stay on the air long, and that's the whole point, right? So let's leave. If you want to go to court, you want to sue somebody, that's up to you. You go find a professional you want to find. I don't think the government should cap what that professional can make. You either want the service or not. Leave it up to the free market. And I don't care if somebody's going to say, well, it's unethical for an attorney to do that. I'm sorry. I don't care about that. Let people make their own decisions. And here on the question of value, okay, well, if you don't want an attorney, I guess you could figure out a way to do it yourself, and you can argue what you want to argue in court. But most people, they can't do that because they're not attorneys. It's the whole concept of, I have a skill set, it's for hire. Do you want it or not? Why should the government get involved and say, no, we're going to cap what class action attorneys should make, or attorneys in general? And people say, look, there's some people out there, conservatives, they can't stand. And I understand there needs to be reform, but it doesn't need to be. I'm telling you, why would we want to single out any profession? Why would we want to start going down that road? The principle of the matter suggests, no, I don't want anyone telling me that I'm charging too much for advertising, and so the government's going to come in and regulate how much I charge. I don't want that. Just like I don't think it's right, and I don't see how we can support this of saying the government must say an attorney can only make X amount of dollars in this particular case. Like I said, the devil's in the details. This tort reform amendment is not what it's cracked up to be. Conservatives are always, it's a big issue, tort reform, like loser pay. Like I said, I can get behind that. But I can't get behind giving the legislature the power of rules of evidence in a society that's supposed to be based off of separate and equal branches of government. And I can't get behind, this idea of capping what a private individual can charge somebody else in a private relationship, in a private contract, for services that they're providing. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see how anybody would support that. I think some Republicans may be like, well, it's really, really bad situation, the status quo, and so the ends justify the means. No, the ends don't justify the means if you're violating the principle of, a free market and being able to charge somebody what you want to charge them for service if they willingly agree to it. They are openly agreeing to pay you the percentage of what you get if you win the court case. This doesn't make any sense to me. On all of that, we're going to be voting on it this November, and it is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight between the two special interest groups here. I mean, it is going to be epic. This headline from last week, funding pours in on Arkansas ballot proposal on lawsuit damages. Well over $1.5 million is already in the bank, according to John Moritz, the bank accounts of groups on opposing sides of the looming debate over a ballot proposal on lawsuit damages, legal fees, and court rules, with nearly a year to go before voters decide the issue. One question on the November ballot will be a proposed amendment to the Arkansas Constitution that would sharply curtail the kinds of damages juries can award for pain and suffering. Yeah, that's the other thing we didn't even talk about is the price on a life is now capped at a certain amount of money, which does not go over well with a lot of people. Let's see. The proposal is commonly called tort reform. Arkansas Republicans, backing of business groups, voted last year to put the amendment before voters. Anyway, my point is the funding on this is out the wazoo. And so there's going to be the people say, we want the tort reform, and then there's going to be the people that put the money and say, we don't want the tort reform. And so get ready, because you're going to hear advertisements all over the place, all over the state, telling you to vote one way or the other. And I'm going to continue to cover this. But right now, as it stands, there's no way I'd vote for this thing. There's no way I could vote for the tort reform amendment on the ballot this coming November. All right, we got to take a break. Folks, you're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell, back in just a moment.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat-shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Hey, coming up in the next hour, does the Arkansas General Assembly in general, do they have the votes, the 75% threshold required to fund DHS, the entire DHS budget, which includes Obamacare Medicaid expansion? Do they have the votes? That is the question. There's been some Twitter activity over the weekend that may suggest an answer. We'll get to that coming up at 7 o'clock. I want to remind everybody that we are broadcasting. If you want to watch the program, you can always do that. You can always catch up if you missed the first hour, you missed the second hour. You just go to facebook.com/Conduit News, and there you're going to find the video of the day and the broadcast of the day, and so you can watch it at any moment. I was had a friend the other day, and he was saying, how he's not up from 6 to 8, and that certainly is a shame, but maybe I'm just jealous. But you can always go and you can get the podcast. If you just want to do the audio only version, you can do that. Just go to conduitnews.com and click on Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell. And you can get to the podcast that way, or you can just look it up on iTunes, your app store, or your iTunes store, or the SoundCloud. And you can get 2 files a day. Each hour is in a different file, and you can listen just to the audio only. Or, like I said, you can watch the program if you'd rather do that. And it's all available there for you. So let's see. We do have some activity on our Facebook feed right now. Senator Brian King is watching on Facebook, and he just said, Paul, Governor Asa Hutchinson says the 75 vote threshold doesn't apply to him. And that's exactly right. We were just detailing that in the last half hour about that line item veto scheme. He, I guess in 2016, he lamented to the news media that Arkansas has the 75 vote threshold. I'm sorry, not 75, the 75% threshold, meaning there's 100 House members, so you got to have 75 votes to spend money. There's 35 senators, so you got to have 75% of that 35 to spend money. And actually, this is something the authors of the Arkansas Constitution got right. Think about this. Think about the government. Think about the intentions behind setting up a government and a constitution here in Arkansas that requires 75% approval to spend taxpayer money. That is encouraging that you have to get that high. You have to have really basically massive agreement to spend for the government to act. You got to have 75%. That is a limited government, folks. That is a limited government. That is putting constraints. That's putting chains on the government. And our governor didn't want to do that. Our governor used a questionable legally speaking. There's some say that what he did was unconstitutional by getting around he got the 75 votes, or he got the 75%, but then he line item vetoed the one part he didn't like. And they're saying there are people saying you can't do that. Immediately they said you can't do that. And so what they did was, when they called a special session, they added it and where you don't have to have the 75%, so they reauthorized the program. So basically, even if somebody were to sue, well, what are you going to do? They came back in a special session. So it really kind of was a scheme, just based on that. So Brian King, again on Facebook, if the ordinary citizen tried to do a line item veto scheme on a traffic ticket or in a business contract, they would be put in jail. Wow. That's very, that's a very good point. Hey, good morning, everybody. We're going to be back here in 5 minutes for hour number 2. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Want to hold on to it at all costs. I certainly, I've seen a lot in my limited time, covering all of this. And I will just tell you that people, I think the average Arkansan maybe doesn't realize what a competitive disadvantage people who don't want to use power to, lord over someone else. Like we people who just want to be left alone, put their nose to the grindstone and work. A lot of those folks don't actually end up down there. The people who end up down there are the ones who can't create for themselves, so they would rather pass laws to take from those who are doing the things they can't do. And I know that, again, is a skeptical view, but that is just, I feel like, the human condition. And so it's really it's a gem when we get an honest person down there.
Well, there's two things that really stuck out on me in this thing as I researched it. And one was the 2.5% tax on insurance premiums imposed by the state. Why? If you're trying to help people with a program, why are we putting a 2.5% tax on insurance premiums? Who thinks this stuff up? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And another is that, we got to pay 5% of the premiums. A lot of people don't know that in 2 years, that rises to 10%. How much money is that going to be if you look at the big picture for us to have to come up with on a program that's unsustainable, and it's just going to get progressively worse and worse and worse as time goes by? If we don't kill this thing, do something about it pretty quick.
Yeah. So let me ask.
It's going to affect every area of our lives.
Yeah, you kind of already mentioned this. I think I know where you're going to go. But, I mean, do you think health care is a right, Bob?
No, I do not. Where in the Constitution does it state that you have a right to health care?
Do you think that there are Republicans that are starting to – I mean, do you think there are Republicans in Arkansas that believe that it should be, or that it is, in fact, a right? Or, they're motivated maybe out of good intentions and compassion, but do you think it's just like, okay, we need to – Obama got it done. We just are going to have to embrace this new mantle, this new federal edict that, hey, this is now a right in this country.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. Several weeks ago, before I really got started into this thing, I heard a term that I had never heard, progressive Republican. And I think that my first thought was, are you kidding me? You guys are sitting on the wrong side of the aisle. But I've actually met a few of them, and yes, I actually do believe that they think that is a right. But now, with that being said, most of them are younger people. They hadn't been around as long. They tend to be a little bit idealistic. And fact of the matter is, we hadn't been teaching any kind of real history in schools in years. Mm-hmm. And I think all this revisionist history stuff is finally catching up. And the people who learn that are now assuming positions of authority, in government and town councils, mayors, senators, representatives, all walks of life. And we are just now beginning to see people that actually believe that, hey, you know what, this is a right and this is a function of government, because they never learned otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, we just got a text message from a listener. We have Dave writing in. I love this guy. Who is he again? Okay, so we're talking with Bob Bailey, who is a state Senate candidate for District 16. That is the Russellville area and beyond. I mean, it's a big district you guys are running for. It's a special election in here in a couple of weeks. Trying to fill the seat of the late Senator Greg Standridge, who tragically passed away after a battle with cancer. Yeah, Bob, I mean, you're really firing on all cylinders here. What do you think? What's important? What's important to the people of your district? What do you think?
I think that this Medicaid fiasco is a big concern. I think some people are really disappointed in some of the bills that have been presented that never saw the light of day. I'll give you an example. Truth and title on a bill. Think about that. You present a bill, and the title is supposed to tell you what's in the bill. Now, explain to me why something like that would not see the light of day.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, here we go, folks. Welcome. It's hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, and we got to have your help to do that. One of the ways you can do it is just to keep on listening, but also tell your friends, okay? Phone number 870-275-9799 or sound off on Facebook. That's the easiest way, really. Fun to participate. Facebook.com/Conduit News. All right, so real quick, we got the whiteboard this week. Our whiteboard says, you don't get what you pay for. You don't get what you pay for. Interesting that this week is School Choice Week. Did you know that? This is when they're going to be talking about all kinds of concepts of giving parents more choice in kids' education, which means a change in the status quo, which means many superintendents across the state, you know, their heads are kind of spinning because they don't like this idea. They don't like somebody thinking that they can educate the kids better without them being involved. But no, in all seriousness, we've got we talked to Dr. Howard Fuller on, I guess, last week on Thursday. Matter of fact, you can go check that out on Facebook. It's going to be playing. He is going to be in Little Rock tomorrow. Is it tomorrow that he's going to be in Little Rock, Joe? I can't remember. I don't want to. Let me just Google. Make sure, because I don't have that. I had it in front of me last week. Just, you know, Dr. Howard Fuller, Little Rock. You'll find the press release pretty easy in a Google search. I want to make sure I get it, but it's going to be at the Mosaic Church. We'll correct the record for sure here in just a moment. So you don't get what you pay for. Okay, you don't get what you pay for. I think that is the biggest problem right now with education, is that you don't get what you pay for. And that's what this whiteboard, that's why the whiteboard is what it is, because we're giving them all this money to educate our society, and we're not getting the results that we should have. And so you have other people saying, well, we need to give parents more choice and that sort of thing. Yeah, there it is, Tuesday. It is Tuesday. All right, so I can see it here on the bailout screen. So Tuesday, January 23rd, town hall meeting featuring Dr. Howard Fuller and Dr. Patrick Wolf. It's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Mosaic Church, which is in Little Rock. That's 6221 Colonel Glenn Road. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on. Wednesday, January 24th, you got a school choice rally featuring Dr. Fuller from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Arkansas State Capitol. Looks like Governor Hutchinson, Lieutenant Governor Griffin, and Attorney General Leslie Rutledge are scheduled to speak. Then Thursday, January 25th, a school choice rally from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. On the KIPP campus. That's in Blytheville? Okay. So wow. Okay. Cool. So all right. Bottom line is, back to this: we don't get what you pay for. We're really not, and I think that's the biggest issue. So we got to have new ideas. Right, and here's an example of why we don't get what we pay for. The same people that are always about education, got to have more money, education, more money, we got to throw more money at, are the same people that are like workforce training. Wait a second. We've had your kids. The government has been in charge of institutionalizing. Of educating them for 13 years. We got to spend more money. We promise we'll get them ready for the workforce if you give us another 3 or 4 years. You've had them for 13 years, and they're not ready to work? Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Some priority is out of whack somewhere. You've had them for 13 years. I'm sorry. That's a long time. People who are in the education system, I know the teachers are all fantastic, and they're just tired of being regulatory compliance officers. I get that. And not teachers. I'm not faulting the teachers, but the system, something's wrong here. When you've had them for 13 years in the same government that's always about more money for education is now, well, we need more money for workforce training. Hang on, what's going on here? We're already giving you money to do the thing for 13 years. So that's why the whiteboard today for School Choice Week says you don't get what you pay for. And that, I really think, if you boil it all down, that's the biggest issue, is we're not getting what we're already giving the government money to do. Same thing goes for roads and everything else. Okay, transitioning. Does the Arkansas General Assembly, does the establishment at the Marble Palace, do they have the votes to continue Obamacare Medicaid expansion that's been renamed Arkansas Works? Well, there was a quote from last week in a Talk Business and Politics article of the majority leader, Senator Jim Hendren. The majority leader, Senator Jim Hendren, said that they are close, but they don't have the votes yet. And I think that was in an article on the special election of District 16, which has, from what I can tell, only one non-establishment candidate running, which is Mr. Bob Bailey. So the non-establishment candidate's not going to vote the way they want him to. The establishment candidates obviously would vote the way they want him to. Hey, before we get to this, though, can we go down memory lane one more time about Senator Jim Hendren? After Senator Jim Hendren put forth a bill in 2015 to, quote, end Medicaid expansion, and he, in fact, did not end Medicaid expansion, and conservatives were misled at the very least. And we have the audio. We went over it last week. This program was expanding, and we were getting other affiliates to pick it up, and our first affiliate was an affiliate in Russellville, which used to be KCBM, is now in Russellville on KARV. And so it was interesting that Senator Hendren was going to speak at the Tri-County Tea Party in the Russellville area. And so I decided, and what the program was telling folks the truth, just like we're doing now. We were getting out there. We were saying, hey, guys, we're being lied to here, basically, because the program doesn't do what they say it's going to do. They actually want to keep it. They actually want to continue giving hospitals a guaranteed revenue stream, guaranteed by us, the taxpayers. And so, it's growing government. It's not doing what they say it's going to do. And I thought we were Republicans here. Basically doing the exact same thing I'm doing now. So I go and I decide to do I did the show, from the affiliate in Russellville, and then I decided to attend this Tea Party meeting, and because I wanted to hear what Senator Hendren had to say to this group of Tea Partiers, because, when he was in front of a bunch of conservatives in the basement of the Marble Palace, he was saying how he just trust him, he's going to end the program, and in fact, the cat was out of the bag. His bill didn't do that. Matter of fact, it said we have to guarantee coverage for the new population. So I go and I listen to the majority leader of the Arkansas Senate, and he has a slideshow, and I am part of the slideshow. It was very awkward. I was in the audience. And he puts my picture up on the slideshow and criticizes me because our whiteboard a couple of weeks prior to this said task farce, because and that obviously has been a phrase that has stuck because they want to govern by task forces, and I think they're a complete joke and a farce and a way to actually disenfranchise our duly elected representatives to represent us, because instead you only have a few special legislators that get to make decisions on our behalf, and it's very frustrating to me. And I thought to myself, good grief, I'm right over the target. If the majority leader of the Arkansas Senate is going to new broadcast areas where we are now in a new population of people across Arkansas, and we're speaking our truth, and he's going to the Tea Party, and he's putting my picture up and telling them that I'm actually wrong, I thought, wow, what a compliment. So I just figured I'd just tell you guys that. That's a nice memory lane stuff. So Senator Hendren over the weekend tweeted this. Joe, throw this up on the screen. Senator Hendren tweeted that his prayer, he said, quote, "My prayer for the Arkansas legislature as we prepare for fiscal session. Lord, let us do what's right for the people. Let us seek your will. Let us do what's best regardless of political consequences. And please, dear God, let us never look like Congress." So that's his prayer. He put that out on Twitter. Now, he actually put it in quotations. He said, "My prayer for the Arkansas legislature for the fiscal session is quote." And so I thought, is that him quoting? Because you don't need to put quotes because it's you on Twitter. So everything you say is you. So I was like, is that a quote from something else? And I Googled it, and I couldn't find it. I didn't spend an exhaustive amount of time on it. I probably spent 5 minutes just, I put that in. I couldn't find it. So it could be, attributed to somebody else. But regardless, I got to thinking about this tweet over the weekend, and I thought to myself, is Senator Hendren once again saying that he doesn't have the votes to pass Obamacare Medicaid expansion in the fiscal session? And because when he says at the end here, let us never look like Congress, well, what does Congress look like right now? Well, Congress is shut down. The government is shut down. Congress isn't shut down, but the government is shut down. And so what he's saying is that makes everything look bad and dysfunction. And so let me game this out for you. The funding for Arkansas Works Obamacare will be in the DHS appropriation. Now, it is entirely possible to separate the two and have an up or down vote on just funding for Arkansas Works and then an up or down vote for the rest of the DHS budget. But Jim Hendren, being Asa Hutchinson's nephew, is never going to let that happen because he is all about protecting the status quo and protecting the crony capitalism and protecting your taxpayer dollars going to insurance companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield every month to the tune of $500 per person per month. There's 300,000 people in the program, or I think they said the other day 280,000 is what it's been reduced to. That's still a gargantuan amount of money. And so that's his goal, is to keep that. And I thought we were Republicans, but apparently not. So does that mean if they're not going to separate it out and we're going to be in the same situation that we were in back in 2016 where it just says, hey, we're not going to fund the DHS budget, and then you're at a gridlock. You can't get to the 75% threshold. So is this indicating that they don't have the votes? That's my question, because I'm speculating here, but what I'm speculating is that Senator Jim Hendren saying, and please, dear God, let us never look like Congress, to me that says if we get to the same point we were in 2016 and you don't have the votes to the 75% threshold, what happens? DHS just doesn't get funded, and to Jim Hendren, that would mean we look like Congress now. So that is my speculation on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Feel free to sound off on Facebook. But on secondary, you know what I love? There's nothing better than when a politician throws around Bible verses. So this prayer, again, Jim Hendren saying, Lord, let us do what's right by the people. I agree. Let us seek your will. I agree. You know, it's possible, by the way. I have no idea, but it's possible that it's God's will for the program to end. It's possible, you know. And God certainly is sovereign over these things. In many cases, well, in all cases, He's sovereign over it. You know, the things that we think. I mean, you know, God was sovereign over President Obama being put in office. He was sovereign over President Trump being put in office. He was sovereign over Asa Hutchinson being put in office. Right. So scroll down for a second. So Janet Crow, a friend of mine, friend of the show, she responded to this tweet. God, dear God, please don't let us be like Congress. She responds to the tweet and just says, too late, meaning you guys are already like Congress. And so then Senator Jim Hendren replies back, as you see here on the screen, and says, bless you, Janet, Luke 6:28. So, if you look at the context, you go to Luke 6:28. We go to 27 first. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. So Senator Hendren is saying here that he is blessing Janet because he felt cursed by her saying too late, meaning you already are like Congress. So what we can infer from this is that Senator Hendren interpreted that as Janet cursing at him or cursing him, you already are like Congress. And so Jim wanted Janet to know that he was blessing her and obeying biblical commandments. From just generally speaking, that's the interaction that took place on Twitter this weekend.
And, okay, so it also says love your enemies. So does Jim Hendren see Janet as an enemy?
I mean, maybe. You know, I don't know. I think
it's a really look. That's honestly a really poor response.
Well, I mean, feel free, give us your opinion, Joe. Why?
Well, from a legislator standpoint, why would you cite this Bible verse? Like, I don't mind him citing a Bible verse, but why this one? It makes you seem like, one, you feel personally attacked by the fact that she said that you're too late. You already look like that. Like, you already look like Congress. And love your enemy. Why would you say possibly that, like, I don't know where Janet lives, possibly one of your constituency is an enemy? Why would you say anyone's an enemy? Like, why would you openly just go, hey? It just makes you look really weird.
Yeah.
Dumb.
I mean, certainly, you know, enemy said is a strong word. Certainly, I mean, the policy, we're in opposite corners on policy. I mean, you know, there's no question that that's the case.
Yeah,
but I don't wish anybody ill. I mean, like, as much as I disagree with Asa, and as much as I think he needs to lose this next election, and as much as I think Senator Jim Hendren doesn't need to be the president of the Senate as the governor's nephew, not to mention they're moving Arkansas towards the left, and they're disguising it as that there's some, you know, like they're conservatives or the next Ronald Reagan or something. As much as I disagree, I don't wish them any ill will in terms of, you know. I don't think of them as an enemy in the way you would think of them as an enemy.
Yeah, but
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
just because someone disagrees with you doesn't automatically make them your enemy.
Yeah,
like, and that's a problem that we have currently today.
Now, the stakes get a little high. If I'm honest, the stakes do get a little higher for me, and we got to take a break when you start to think about the liberty, the future freedoms and liberties for your kids being diminished because politicians in elected office today can't understand that progressivism, collectivism, and the path to socialism is the enemy of this country, because you are condemning future generations to less freedom. Now then the stakes do get a little higher, and I think that's why I get so worked up and want to stop these guys. I want to stop what they want for this state. I want it to go the opposite way. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. So this is actually a great critique. So I have a listener who's listening to us analyze Senator Jim Hendren tweeting a prayer about not looking like Congress, and we're inferring that means not to shut down the government or not fund DHS, which is a possibility in the upcoming fiscal session if they don't have the votes from true conservatives, to continue Arkansas Works. When he said, "My prayer as we prepare for the fiscal session, Lord, let us do what's right for the people. Let us seek your will. Let us do what's best regardless of political consequences. And please, dear God, let us never look like Congress." Okay? And then you have Janet Crow scrolling down on this tweet. She says, "Too late." And then he says, "Bless you, Janet," Luke 6:28, which is a Bible verse saying, hey, love your enemies, bless those who curse you. And so listen to this critique of what he said. This is fantastic. Listener writes in and says, "So he prays for God's will to be done, then Bible jukes someone who critiques. Sounds like he's convinced God's will is his will. The prayer was for show, or he's trying to guilt people into agreeing with him by being the spiritual one." Interesting how that can come across. Now, it's a very interesting text, listener. But yeah, Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, okay, pray for God's will to be done. But are you willing to accept, if it's God's will, for Arkansas Works to not get funded, or DHS to not get funded, or the government in D.C. to shut down, or, the government in Arkansas to get shut down, or Asa Hutchinson to lose a primary to Jan Morgan? I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, I'm okay with it because, who wants to be outside of the will of God? Not me. Back in a minute.
Give you an example. Truth and title on a bill. Think about that. You present a bill, and the title is supposed to tell you what's in the bill. Now, explain to me why something like that would not see the light of day.
So you're talking about you're talking about a proposed bill to make sure that whatever is in the title is actually what the bill says. So no more deceptive ballot titles or bill titles.
Now, when you have a bill that's as simple as that doesn't make it out there on the floor, doesn't see the light of day, that to me indicates that we got a pretty serious problem down there when something as simple as that will not pass. You look at another bill was disclosure on who you were dealing with when you were voting on specific issues, which some of them are downright conflict of interest, That got killed. I thought that was a good bill. To me, there's a certain amount of deceit right there, even when you come up with a bill like that says, hey, we just want to know who's on the sides lobbying with you and what their intent is, how they want to vote on these bills. It's a transparency issue. That never saw the light of day. We've got issues with government officials that won't do what they're told to do. They won't do their job. I'm not going to mention any names, but, I'll give you an example on this. Arkansas is technically a constitutional carry state, right?
Yes.
So technically you don't have to have a permit to carry either openly or concealed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that the way you understand it?
That's the way I understand it.
Okay, now what is so hard about that? Why does every single police chief in this state, every police officer, why do they not know that? Why are we strong in some areas and weak in others?
Mm-hmm.
When all that's got to be done is the governor to say, okay, we are a constitutional carry state. A permit is no longer required to either openly carry or concealed carry, but he didn't come out and say that, did he?
No, he didn't.
And all he did was muddy up the waters with that kind of silliness.
Yeah.
When anybody with a fifth-grade education can read the Constitution and see what it is,
that's good stuff.
I'm hearing all kinds of hate and discontent with the way things are happening.
And those are really good. I think sample of issues. They certainly know what's going on. Bob Bailey, we are out of time. I appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure. Keep us posted about the campaign, and I know the election is coming up in a couple of weeks. And so, good luck to you, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Paul. Good talking to you, and thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate it. My name is Paul Harrell, and the phone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Let me see here. Or Facebook.com/Conduit News. Let me do these side-by-side comparisons. I want to remind people what happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we had a budget increase of $172 million from Governor Asa Hutchinson. And, of course, the governor's office tried to claim, in carefully crafted language and spinning it, they tried to claim that they were cutting $100 million. In reality, they were cutting $100 million from the original increase. So instead of $172 million, the headline would have read $272 million. So you see the carefully crafted language there. You got to know when to look for it. Joe, for our viewers, I want to contrast these two headlines because I want you to see how some people did take the bait. It's under the photo viewer is where it's going to be. So here it is. This is a tweet from KARK4 News, just so you know. KARK4 News tweeted, Governor Hutchinson announces $100 million cut in proposed budget. Now, the average person sees that and thinks, gosh, it's amazing that he's such a conservative. He's such a conservative. I mean, this guy is doing the people's work. How in the world can you have that headline and then the Democrat Gazette gets it right? This is what they said. Arkansas governor calls for $172 million increase in state spending. So these are two vastly different headlines, and they're communicating two vastly different concepts. One, that the governor is a big spender. The other side of it is that the governor's a huge saver, that he's saving money, that he's cutting the... That is so dishonest. At the very least, you just got to admit, wow, there's somebody who is really worried about how he's coming across. I'm so glad that the Democrat Gazette picked up on the fact that it's a $172 million increase and didn't buy into the phony. I think they tried too hard. I think for even the Democrat Gazette, they were like, you know, we can kind of see what he's trying to do here, and it's just not right. We're not going to print a headline that says he's cutting $100 million of anything because he's increasing the budget by $172 million. And then there's the other possibilities that, you know, people at the paper think that $172 million is a good thing. An increase is a good thing. Oh, government's growing. Fantastic. Yes. Progress. Marches on. Isn't that fascinating, though? Those two headlines, side by side. Go back to the other one. Go back to the KRK one real quick. I want to see it one more time. Governor announces $100 million cut in proposed budget. It's incredible. How can KARK, I mean, it's NBC affiliate, how can KARK tweet something like that with a straight face? Were they not paying attention? Do you think anyone at KRK read the Arkansas Democrat Gazette and like, do you think they picked up on it at all? That's an honest question. Was there anyone at KRK that said, wow, these are two vastly different headlines? I mean, vastly different, communicating two completely different things. Yes, you can get into the minutia. You can get into the minutia and say, well, technically our headline is right here because it is a $100 million cut in the proposed budget. But come on, folks. I mean, as a journalist, you have some responsibility of the context or the perception of the average reader. The perception of the average reader. I mean, if you ever doubted that there is a liberal media in Arkansas, here's an example that this certainly is. I mean, this is a really biased headline meant to communicate. And here's the thing. We are to a point in our society with the media that we have to assume worse motives because there's just too many examples. We could say, well, maybe it's just bad journalism. Maybe they just listened to the governor and they didn't listen to any of the questions, you know, during that committee hearing, getting them to admit that it was an increase. Maybe it's just sloppy journalism. It's possible. Or it's worse motives, meaning they are trying to cover for the governor. I think we're to the point because there's so many examples of mainstream media, especially nationally, being caught doing that very thing. I mean, just look at NBC yesterday when Tom Cotton was on with Chuck Todd, how Chuck Todd is taking the Democrat line, completely ignoring what Chuck Schumer said in 2013 about, you know, the government shutdown and things like that. I mean, it's just kind of it's crazy when you think about it. Tom Cotton, by the way, if you missed our first segment at 6 o'clock, I'm telling you, I've never felt more adequately represented than I do right now on this particular issue. Tom Cotton is leading the way. He is He's combating a New York Democrat on behalf of you and me. I applaud him for it. I think his merit-based immigration reforms are huge. It tickles me to death that somebody like Lindsey Graham doesn't like it. It tickles me even more that the Democrats can't stand the idea. This is real heavy-duty stuff. Senator Cotton is taking the lead, and I am so glad that I voted for Senator Tom Cotton right now. He stands up for President Trump to the media, where we're in this time where there's a lot of Republicans that maybe are not sure whether or not that's a thing they should do. It's just very refreshing, in my opinion, to be watching Senator Cotton on the national stage, being very effective, being articulate, and communicating the conservative message. Because, folks, I've said for a long time, it's easy to campaign as a conservative. It's harder to govern as one, unless you actually know and what you believe. Because if you can go out there and you can take the heat and communicate your ideas, it's a winning argument. Folks, the average American, if you tell them, and this is the policy Cotton's advocating, look, if you come to this country, we want to make sure that you are you can stand on your own 2 feet. You're not going to be taking welfare. Most people say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, right? And that's just driving the left crazy. They hate the idea. They absolutely can't stand the idea. So it's really, really good stuff. Okay, all right. Get that. You can get that out of there, Joe. All right, again, 870-275-9799. Let's see here. Next up, I want to talk about this e-commerce article. Where did it go? Oh, yeah, here we go. All right, so they want to create an internet tax. Right, there's no doubt about it. We saw it here at the state level. You don't actually hear Governor Asa Hutchinson mentioning this when he's talking to people on the campaign trail now. And yes, he is on the campaign trail because he's got a primary opponent in Jan Morgan. You don't really hear him talk about the internet tax anymore because I think he knows it was a terrible idea. It was a losing issue for him because I think most Arkansans are against it. That's right, most Arkansans. And it's such a strange scenario when you think about Walmart, retail brick-and-mortar giant, being here, but a majority of the citizens of this state are like, no, we don't want more taxes, and we don't want you to tax our internet. It's kind of interesting, and that's what set up this really strange relationship between the constituents and Walmart and the politicians, and them trying to do certain they're running these bills to raise internet taxes and things like that, to create one. And one specifically was done just so it would get a challenge and go to the Supreme Court. Of course, that's going to happen anyway. The Supreme Court is going to hear the South Dakota case, the challenge. They want to redo the Quill case and say, that was an original case about catalogs, whether or not if you get a catalog in the mail, you're going to have to pay taxes and that sort of thing. But you're not hearing much of Governor Asa Hutchinson on the campaign trail mentioning the internet tax anymore. Last year, though, in the wake of the defeat of the internet tax, because we had enough conservatives in the House that banded together and said no, then the Municipal League urges city councils to start passing resolutions saying, Asa, will you please call a special session and pass the internet tax anyway? Asa at first said there was all these rumors because legislators were talking to me saying he's going to call a special session on the internet tax. He's going to call a special session on the internet tax. Now you don't hear it. Matter of fact, you have headlines from last week. Asa Hutchinson, no special session for the internet tax. Well, it's campaign season. Can you imagine if he had called a special session for an internet tax right now, for a tax increase during a primary? You have to admit, they just care about the next 5 months. That's all they care about. They want to get past the next 5 months, and then they can go back to governing like progressive liberals. they can go back to governing that way. Perfectly fine. Go for it. You just got to get past. You got to get past the next 5 months. Got to make sure we don't give him any easy ammunition. Got to make sure that no one finds out about the record spending. Make sure no one finds out about growing government. Make sure no one finds out about all the tax increases I supported. Make sure no one finds out that I didn't think the anti-Sharia law bill was worth signing, and I didn't like it, and I fought against it, and I tried to not even get it. Behind the scenes, I was trying to get the Sharia law bill killed. All this other, the anti-Sharia law bill, by the way. I have to clarify. If you leave that standing as is, it's like why would that be a bad thing, Paul? So I have this piece here, and I really want to use this to I guess point out that the free market is a good thing, and leaving people alone is a good thing. And many times when the government claims an uneven playing field, it's not legitimate. They just claim that because they want to be involved in it. I mean, they want this money. The government doesn't care about brick and mortar small businesses. Let me say that again. The government, these politicians that want an internet tax, do not care about brick and mortar businesses. If they did, they would eliminate. They would reduce taxes. They would eliminate the income tax. They would reduce the corporate tax, or eliminate the corporate tax. If they really cared about small businesses, that's what they would be doing. They only care about small businesses in their words because they want more money for themselves and the government to fund what they want to fund. Ask yourself, why all of a sudden does the government care about small businesses and brick and mortar when they don't care about them in any other of their policies, any other of their actions, or most of them? They just, they don't treat you as the backbone of this state. They don't treat you that way. And now all of a sudden, no, we've got to level the playing field for you. You can't compete with these internet companies, and we've got to raise taxes on the people. By the way, that actually hurts small businesses, because if you're paying more money when you shop online, now that's less money in your pocket to go to a brick and mortar business and shop there. Ever think about that? No. We care about the small businesses. We finally care about them. It just so happens that if we get what we want, the government's going to get more money in sales tax collections. I don't buy it. It's a scam. Everything that's just carefully crafted language is such a scam. But here's the thing. Do you know what online businesses are doing? They're making shopping at brick and mortar businesses better, because brick and mortar businesses are now having to compete with things like same-day delivery. So behavior is changing, and it's actually more convenient for the consumer if the government will just leave people alone. And say, Paul, but it's not fair. Well, again, I don't buy the not fair argument, because a brick and mortar business and an online store are completely different. You can run an online store, in your basement, because you don't have to have a brick and mortar store. You don't have to have, you don't have to have a road to your house to run an online business. And by the way, this idea, the Quill stuff, they want Arkansas to have jurisdiction over an Indiana business, or California to have jurisdiction over an Arkansas business. We better be very careful with that. If Arkansas tells Indiana, you owe us tax because some Arkansan bought a T-shirt online from your store, I mean, what's that Indiana business paying for? He's paying a sales tax and sees none of the benefit for it. He pays Arkansas sales tax for city streets that he doesn't use, for trash and sewer and police protection that he doesn't use. That's not right. That doesn't make any sense at all. Not to mention, you're opening this idea up of a sovereignty crisis where California can get mad that Arkansas has coal plants and they can try to enforce a carbon tax on Arkansas. it's madness. They're so desperate for revenue. The people in Arkansas proposed this because they were so desperate for revenue because we've overcommitted ourselves with Medicaid expansion that they're throwing just logic and reason outside, just completely outside the outside the window. Now, I know. Look, there is. You got some people who are saying, okay, well, maybe they can address this from a national standpoint with a sales tax. And, yeah, you're right, they could, and I would be against it. I even know President Donald Trump has talked about how Amazon is hurting brick-and-mortar businesses. But, honestly, I would respectfully disagree. I think an internet sales tax is the wrong way to go. The only way to really limit the growth of government at this point is to cut off the money that's going to it. And certainly we don't want to create new tributaries that fund this giant river of waste and swamp. You know what I'm saying? So it's a bad deal all around. But listen to this. 10 years ago, a decade ago, Talk Business and Politics, same-day delivery wasn't a part of the transportation concept. Amazon continues to push for same-day delivery, offering same-day free shipping in 8,000 towns and cities, and competitors will struggle to offer that. Amazon is building its local delivery fulfillment network and has started offering Sunday deliveries. Also, Amazon has developed its own transportation capabilities, essentially operating as a third party. Now, eventually, Amazon is going to get so big, and they've already gotten to this point where they themselves may support being taxed, just so they can Johnny sweep the legs out of any other e-commerce competitor in the future. You know what I'm saying? Like, they may just accept it. Well, we've made our money, so we'll just get in bed with the government and that sort of thing. That tends to be what happens. I think you saw a little bit of that with net neutrality. Originally, when net neutrality was coming out, you had a lot of the corporations that support it now opposed it, and now all of a sudden they're on board. You got to scratch your head. Interesting. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, I will stand on the side of the free market. I'll stand on the side of the government staying out, being left alone, and I want the internet to keep getting better. And if the government gets involved, it's not going to get better. It's going to get slower. It's going to get worse. I want the internet of tomorrow, not the internet of today. You let the government start taxing this mess and getting involved, it's going to get worse. Trust me. We're not going to have these cool innovations. Amazon's not going to do as much when it comes to same-day delivery or things like that. And by the way, if they do get an internet sales tax nationally or statewide or whatever, it's not going to save your brick-and-mortar stores because the internet is amazing and convenient, and people are still going to use it to shop, okay? If you're a brick-and-mortar business, you need to get in the online game, or you need to find a niche and say, you know what, I got the one product that people still want to see and feel and touch before they buy it. Those stores are going to be fine. Those stores are going to be fine. They're not all going to go away. Main Street's not going to die. It's all doom and gloom. But the market can be brutal. And you have businesses that die and new businesses that pop up. And instead of trying to, let's just allow for the voluntary cooperation of free men. How about that? In commerce, let's allow for the voluntary cooperation of free men and keep the government out of our lives. I think that's a very popular sentiment. It's popular when you're campaigning as a Republican, apparently not when you're governing as a Republican. And, I guess if Asa Hutchinson survives a primary challenge from Jan Morgan, something tells me we may get a special session to raise our internet taxes after the primary. What do you think? We got to take a break, folks. Back in just a moment.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
On Wednesday, you don't want to miss the program. At 7:30 on Wednesday, we're going to be talking to conservative Melissa Kohler about electronic logging meaning electronic logging of truck drivers. This is a huge story. No one's talking about it. It's going to affect Arkansas truckers in a huge way. It's going to affect recreational people who haul for agricultural shows and things like that. And I may be using the wrong terminology, but you'll have to forgive me. Essentially what's happening, let's just take the truckers' side. This is from farmforum.net. Electronic logging mandate frustrates area truckers. A new regulation that mandates the use of electronic logging devices that automatically record driving time went into effect for most of the trucking industry December 18th. At the same time, a 90-day waiver was granted for drivers hauling agricultural commodities. That's because a one-size-fits-all mandate doesn't actually fit all. So this is designed to prevent people from driving too much and being sleep deprived and being a danger to people on the road, because we got to have the government mandating, because, you know, everybody is the same. Everybody is the same. And there are people that just can't stay alert longer than other people for longer durations of time, because everybody's the same. So we need the government to just mandate what's an appropriate time of driving. How long are you behind the wheel? So, yeah, they're going to do this electronically. And so, anyway, it's going to be a huge deal. It's a huge story. It's going to affect, so think about this. As a truck driver, you say, okay, I drive this many hours, and I get paid this much. And so now, if you want to take your rig and do something recreationally, that's going to count against you. There's all kinds of stuff here that hasn't been thought out, and it's going to boil over. It's a huge issue, and if there aren't Arkansas politicians that need to stand up and do something about it. I'm going to tell all of that to you on Wednesday at 7:30. I'm going to have way more specifics, and you certainly don't want to miss that. Folks, as always, we're going to be back here tomorrow, 6 a.m. I hope you guys have had a good morning with me. I've enjoyed it, and we're going to continue to cover the news. And feel free. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Paul Harrell 1776. Also follow Conduit News, and check out all of our stuff on Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News. And we will see you tomorrow. Brand new 2 hours of conservative talk. Arkansas, thanks so much for listening. Be safe.